My name is David T.S. Wood, and I want to welcome you to My Extra Mile. Now, my guests are all leaders, they're pioneers, they're visionaries, they're disruptors, they're influencers, and most times, beautifully, they're goofballs or incredibly fun. They're just incredible people. They have little time for the rules. They have little time for the expectations of others. They have little time for the status quo or the way things have always been done because they see things differently. These rare individuals, they're driven by challenge. They're driven by purpose. They're driven by service. They're driven by so many things to contribute to the world. The one thing they all have in common is they all go the extra mile. And they leave the world a more beautiful, a more vibrant and a more colorful place. And I'm so excited about my guest today because she just is the really, that description describes her perfectly. But before I actually introduce her, I want to give us a thought about something. That we're recording this at a time in history where everyone's at home. This is during the pandemic. But I don't want this show to be about the pandemic. I want the show to be timeless. So even if we bring it up, it's going to be in a way that you can transfer what's happening now into what's going on in your life, whether you're listening to this in 12 months or 3 months or 6 months, whether you're going through a divorce or whether you're going through hardships or challenges or whatever that looks like, or loss. So again, so even if we talk about it, it's going to be relevant for years to come when we face any of life's challenges. The other thing I want to talk about is I want to talk about sound quality because I'm using Zoom. So if you're listening to this through a podcast, then just zoom in to the content. Don't worry about the nuances of sound because we've got people at home. We're using the Zoom technology and this is the best we can get it. So just suck it up and enjoy it. All right. So thank you for that. And with that being said, my guest, she is a remarkable human being. She's the proud mother of 3 young women, and she's a single mother of 3 beautiful young women. She's so proud of them. She's a best-selling author. She's a serial entrepreneur. She loves business. She's been in the health business arena, pharmaceutical arena for over 15 years before her current profession, where she is really recognized as one of the best of the best, a multi-millionaire. I could go on. She's been on the cover of magazine. I could go on, but I won't. She's as beautiful on the outside or the inside as she is on the outside. She's incredibly fun. One of her favorite things to do is laugh, belly laugh. And so that really tells you a lot about her. So Lisa, welcome to My Extra Mile. How you doing?
Thanks. You just gave me another daughter. I only have 2 sweet 16s, 2 weddings, and then I have a son.
Oh, look at me. I got it wrong. There you go. So your son, I apologize.
I'm like, no, that's way too expensive.
Yeah, but aren't they, what, they're 18, 16, and 13? Is that right?
Yeah, my son's 13, Nick. He's going to be 14, and the girls are 18 and 16. And David, this is you have kids. This is the best time. The teenage years are like amazing. So we're having a lot of fun. And, you know, if I had to be quarantined with anybody, it would be these 3 because they're really, it's been entertaining to say the least.
Well, you know, we you and I were chatting the other day, and we were just talking about how age kind of changes us a lot, right? And just, you know, with age, you know, the things that maybe when we were younger used to stress us out or bother us, you know, you just kind of take in your stride, right? And you was, you know, and the way you sort of accept the world, you know, it's not such a push. Everything's so well for me and you, I know that it's so more elegant, you know. And the challenges when they come, we kind of flow through them. We talked about the other day. We talked a lot about adaptability. Let's talk about that. Where have you, through your life, when you go back to your early times? Because people see you now and you're so put together in so many ways. But when you go back, where did you discover this grit and this adaptability that you sort of wield so beautifully?
When did I discover? You know, I always knew I was somewhat different than the other kids. And I couldn't describe it. There was just a desire that I had. There was a passion for people. I don't know if I knew it or my dad had told me that. From when I was young, I remember him saying, this kid lights up a room and this kid is, and he labeled me as that. And I really, in my heart, felt that. And he died the day before I turned 18, and he was very sick. So he had he had been struggling from when I was 13 to the day before I turned 18, and losing him so young and being faced with a lot of deaths within a 5-year time frame at that age, and then going off to college and getting a job. It was one thing after the other, and I just realized it was really like this, a light bulb moment. And I woke up and I said, I'm not supposed to feel like this. This isn't normal to feel this heavy, this sad, this is life. And I was so young. I mean, when I think about my daughter's 18, I used to go to the library and read personal development books back in the day and remember cassette tapes, and they used to wind them with a pencil? That's how old I am. And I would listen.
And it was better if you had the eraser on the other end with a little metal, because it would do it better, right?
Yeah, you had to have the eraser.
Yeah,
and so if I didn't, I knew I took them off because I needed the backs of earrings sometimes. And I'd go pull them off the back of my earring and try to get it back in there. But and I just, my life was never going to be the same. It wasn't going to look like everybody else's life. I didn't have a dad. We didn't have money. It was a lot of loss in a short time. I lost another significant role model, another male figure right within the same time. It was my aunt's husband, and he was like my other dad. And we worked together. We were so close. And it was back to back. And then a grandmother and my other grandmother and a friend to cancer. And it was all very real, very young. And I poured myself into personal development where I recognized so young. I don't know how I knew to know that at such a young age, but I realized people who went through hard things, if they chose to look at it as an opportunity to expand, life would be a lot easier, because at some time or the other, we are all going to be faced with adversity. We'll be faced with abundance. We'll be faced with joy. It will happen for all of us.
I just want to jump in before you go too far off that for a second, because you said he was 6 since you were 13. Because my question was around your grit and this adaptability that you have, and I'm starting to hear it now. But for 13, your father was going through an illness as well, and then was it inevitable that he was going to pass? Did you know years or months ahead that he wasn't going to make it? Was that something, or was it more of a surprise to you at the time when he did pass?
No, it was cancer, stage 4 cancer, and although he did have remarkable remission at the time, especially back in the 80s, we were way ahead of our time in health and wellness. We had a wheatgrass machine in 1986, if you can imagine. So we really were ahead of the curve, and there was a time we thought he was going to make it. So it was the roller coaster, and it wasn't just the loss of my dad. It was just like a divorce. It's the loss of a family and a unit as you knew it to be. And then how 4 siblings broke off in different directions in dealing with that grief. I think today we talk about grief counseling, and we talk about death, and we talk about the expectation of dying, or I do anyway with my children. No one knew about cancer back then. So at 13, 14, it was the best kept secret in my high school. People didn't know. When 8th grade, when the senior graduation took place, my guidance counselor said, "Why didn't you share this with anybody?" And you didn't talk about that stuff then. So I dealt with it the best that I could with some very close girlfriends that I grew up with. But it was always about the fight to get them to stay alive rather than the potential grief that we would endure and having the tools to handle it. So that was absent.
Well, when I was thinking, where you were just about to lead to, which is these moments in time that we go through, inevitable moments. And I'm thinking of 2 or 3 people right now who, if we use cancer, because it is, it is a word we hear every day almost at some level, we get some people that have traveled that road. I think of Arlene Lance, Carol Elizabeth. I think of these people that we know personally who, it was a real fight, and yet, how they've emerged from it, the family, the entire family, and this sort of new sense, this wisdom, this understanding. So through the hardship emerges, it's like the phoenix coming out of the fire. And yet I have another friend whose wife, when she heard, just gave up. She walked into the bedroom and the doctors gave her a year and she lasted 3 months. And it was just this mind thing where she just accepted it as an inevitable result, and it came very fast. Let's talk, let's explore this, because you and I had this wonderful conversation the other day, which I thought was it was so wonderful. I could have talked to you for 4 hours. I think we talked for about an hour and a half as it was. But this idea about how hardship and what appears to be hardship, even now with what's going on. I mean, you're in the epicenter, the sort of the, if you think of New Jersey and New York right now, in the entire world, this is the place that's experiencing the most loss. And there are people that are flourishing, and that there are people that are stuck and they're immobilized and they're overcome with fear. And again, if we relate this to any part of life, let's talk a little bit about that, about the beauty of hardships and the beauty of challenges, the beauty of all these things that we are going to definitely experience, and how some of us will navigate it, and it's going to make us stronger and wiser and grittier and more adaptable. And with others, they're going to carry it like a burden on their back, and it's going to be, look what happened to me. Can we talk about that, explore that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I say this all the time, in the game of life, we all die at the end. That's the game. Death is inevitable. No one gets out alive. So tomorrow is not promised to me. I've always lived my life like that. Tomorrow is not promised to you. I don't know. So I really, when people talk about like playing full out, I heard something the other day from Brene Brown. And she said, those of us who are sitting in the cheap seats in the arena have absolutely zero opportunity to ever judge those who are in the center playing full out. Because when you play full out, you are always going to suffer from fear and challenges and mud on your face and falling down, and risk takers will always face that. So it's about courage and moving forward in spite of the unknown. And one of the blessings about dealing with death at such a young age for me was I recognized early on, like, this is not a dress rehearsal, people. Like, this is really life today, this moment, being with my kids. And appreciating that. And it also gave me this innate strength to move out of whatever doesn't feel uncomfortable. A business that I was wildly successful in. I mean, where people strive to be at that top. I was. And it didn't feel right for me. It actually felt uncomfortable, like really tight shoes that are gorgeous, but they hurt so bad and you just can't wait to take them off.
Every woman in the world right now is nodding, oh, that feeling.
And you're paid so much money, they should be massaging your feet. Your feet should feel like $1 million, and the second you put them on, you're like, I can't do this. I felt like that in a marriage. I felt like that in a career. I can't do this. And although it looks so beautiful and it looks so perfect from the outside looking in, I can't wear this. I can't feel this constricted. And I believe with adversity, there is an expansion. And once you go through these adversities and you get through the other side, it's really hard to constrict and go back. So I feel the more we really look at, first let's all acknowledge ourselves for all the things we've been through. Like, seriously, people, take a look at all the stuff we have been through and own that, and then find the gratitude. Gratitude is the key, I would say, is the key to my mental health, my success, the relationship with my family. It's constant gratitude. And even in the things that I find so annoying, like mom, when I want to say, just give me 5 minutes. What is, I am so blessed that I have these 3 calling me mom. Yeah. Thank you, God, for another day with these kids. I am so grateful. And it just took awareness around what the irritants were and the opportunity to look for gratitude in it that became my first and foremost. And I believe it's just awareness. I love what you're doing with this. This is brilliant because people don't have the tools, and you're providing through this platform tools. Oh, Lisa said, become aware of what's annoying me and where is the gratitude in that. Yeah. What's the one piece when the alarm clock goes off at 5:30 in the morning? And I do live my ideal life. It is designed the way I want it. I still need to get kids on a bus in the morning.
I just got goosebumps because that's probably the thing that resonates in my body in every single moment of every single day is I am the designer and I get to design it all, every single piece of it. So I'm always constantly in design. It doesn't matter what the situation is. I realize that even if it looks horrendous, because I'm the designer, I get to go into the horrendous part with the design mentality to say, how do I design this to be everything I want it to be? Sort of, do you know what I'm saying? So it's like, so I just love the fact you're talking about this moment or the ability to design. Because I think a lot of people don't understand or they're not conscious yet that they are the designer of their own life. They think life's happening to them instead of for them, right?
1,000%. And how you do that is choice. It's just choosing. So when you look at your chaos and your big ball of just, okay, I'm going to create something out of this mess, you're choosing to look at this as, look at all this untapped opportunity. It's just how you operate, David. That's your come from is always, this is beautiful, is always your initial reaction. That I had to learn to do that. And it's not all the time, but it's a lot. When that alarm clock, that's what I was saying, when the alarm clock goes off, it used to be like, oh, it's so dark. I don't want to get up because I chose a life where I didn't need to get up to an alarm clock, but I still have to get kids on a bus. And when that alarm goes off now, I am grateful. Like, these kids are still mine. We're all in each other's lives. I have an opportunity to do this. My children get to go to school. It was really a shift in constantly looking for the gratitude and the beauty in what could have been that I
want to replay what you've said because I think someone listening may have missed it. I think the subtlety of what you just said is like, if we take everything that's a rub or annoying or what you find annoying in this moment, anything, because you're in life, if we go back to Lisa's early comment, which is, hey, look, one thing for certain, we're all going to die. I bring this up at all my events. When I look out across the audience and I'll say, hey, statistically, we're not all going to make it out of this year. So how about we get living now, like really living now, right? So you're talking about like if we use the alarm clock as the rub, if we notice that every time the alarm goes off, it's like, oh, crap, right? Then why do you want to live with an oh crap feeling? And that's starting the day when the observation is, well, how do I turn that annoyance into something where I can find gratitude, right? Oh, I'm grateful I have a job. I'm grateful I have these kids. I'm grateful that we have this family. I'm great, all those things, so that no longer is a rub. That's not something that's going to annoy you because I watch people. They're like in I have 2 pinball machines in my man cave. But if you watch a ball going around a pinball machine, it's like boom, boom. It reacts to these bumpers. And life's like that. Life's got these little bumpers, and some people, they hit them and they're boom, and they get thrown so far off center. And then they hit another one, boom, boom, right? So I think, Lisa, just going back to your observation, which I think is so beautiful, is notice the rub. And you can put it back into your own context, your own words. Notice the rub. And your particular mechanism of eradicating rubs, or if we call it a rub or annoyance, is to look at it and find some form of gratitude within it that allows it to become something instead of, oh, damn, is, oh, wow. I get to live it a whole nother day, right? Well, maybe not a whole day, but
Well, for the next couple of minutes, we're still here, so that's great. Yes.
The light comes through.
And they got some.
One thing I didn't tell you at the beginning, I think I mentioned to you the other day when we were chatting. This is a two-way street. So if I'm not I don't want it to ever feel like I'm interviewing you. I'm asking because I'm fascinated, and the same for you. Is like we're mutually, the same. So if you feel like asking me anything, you just jump right in. Okay. So I know some things it always feels like someone's being interviewed, but I just want this to be more of a conversation, like we had if no one was watching. Look at our conversation the other day. It wasn't dissimilar from this, right?
It's always like this. 10 years we're friends, David. A decade.
And you know what you said earlier, which I think interesting. You said something about your father saying that when you walk into a room, you light it up. When I was thinking about describing you, and I don't make notes and all this kind of stuff, but I remember the first time I met you, and I remember thinking when you walked in the room lit up. It was visceral for me. And that's and I was saying, wow. And I was observing you without you knowing. And, it's hard if there's a beautiful woman, because if a guy gets caught looking at I watch all people, and I watch them, you watch me. I watch all people with the same eyes. Do I notice beauty? Yeah, of course. But what I notice more is humanity. And I'm fascinated by how one person can walk into a room and there's this light or this presence or this energy or this positivity that oozes out of them, and it's captivating, it's contagious. You talk about a pandemic. Imagine a pandemic of love, or a pandemic of beauty, which we can all live in. Anyway, I'm rambling, but anyway, that's how I was going to describe you, was when you walk into a room that it lights up, and then you said that's what your father said about you as a young woman. So that's interesting. Huh?
That's so nice to hear. Thank you. I'm going to remind my children of that.
Yeah, wait. They'll be 30 before they agree fully.
You know what other people say about me, you guys?
Oh, talk to David. Listen to what he says about me.
But David, you do too. And I believe, you do. And you lift people up, and you leave people in a better place than when you found them. Even if it's a compliment, it's a hello. And I feel it's your vibe and your passion for life that seeps into someone else. Even if they're in your presence for a second, they're like, yeah, I want to do that. And yeah, I get full out. It's almost like a quick electric shock. And then as people are around you, you give them permission to expand. And I think what we both give is we give people an opportunity to realize that it doesn't matter where you were. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter. None of that matters. It matters that you have the passion and the desire to accept change, not create change. Change is inevitable. It's the only constant in our life is change. And my daughter Gianna is 18. I love these ages, 18, 16, 13. My son, it's like, Mom, do you know what an atomic bomb wedgie is? That's the conversation with it. I didn't know what it was. It goes up around your head. That's a 13-year-old boy. He's not at the lunch table with his buddies, so Mom's the best right now. And my daughters are different. And my daughter said to me the other day, we were talking about, I'm divorced. I had been in a relationship for quite some time. And she had a hard time adjusting to that. And she said, I don't like change. And I don't buy that. I said, why would you make that declaration about yourself and that assessment about yourself and own that limiting belief? You absolutely accept change. You're so excited about going to college. You're going away to college. You're going to sleep in a dorm room without life as you know it. And she has her own bathroom and her big bedroom. And now you're going into a dorm room with a suite with 12 girls nonetheless, and you can't wait. So be careful how you talk about things. You don't like meeting someone new in your mom's life. That is one compartment of this whole life and all these different situations. And if you start to say, I don't like change, I don't like change, life is going to be really hard. So I think we
subconsciously, people who make these declarations, and I know you have a background in neuro-linguistic programming, And people always ask me if I do. I don't, but I'm very aware of every single word that comes out of my mouth. And when I'm coaching people, one of the very first things I do is listen for their language. And normally in a couple of minutes, you can tell how someone's life is. If I never saw anyone's life, and you have a 3-minute conversation with them, and you notice the words, that come out of their mouth, and some words have such low energy, right? But they also become forecast. If we say I don't like change, then every time change presents itself, typically it becomes hard because you're so programmed to not like it. Whereas if you love change, when change comes, you can embrace however that change looks, and you just get better. It's like building a muscle. But I noticed with your language, it's very clean. And, I rarely, if ever, have I heard a low energy word come out of your mouth. And is it something that you practiced? And is it something like with your daughter, this awareness that those words have consequences, and those words repeated over time, create these new pathways of the brain, which become our default. And we don't even know we've done it to ourselves, right? But that's the importance of what you're talking about, right?
Absolutely. I think I was always that, and then going through so much, during those early 20 years, it was not my language at all. My language was very heavy, very low vibe. And it was thanks to shows like this and teachers like us, who I just started to follow and listen and learn. And ironically, it's how I started network marketing. I used to go to network marketing meetings and watch the trainers in front of the room. New York City, I'd go from room to room to room. They'd have 5 or 6 different meetings to hear the language. And I used to go in the back and buy the tapes, once again, the tapes, and listen to how they talked. And I'd pretend to be that person. And I started to change my own language and then save up money. And I started courses very, very young. So I am still doing personal development work. I am still personally enrolling in courses. I am still working with teachers. And I think in this day and age, especially in the day of technology, it's not how it used to be. You're exposed to so much, and that can be a detriment, and we can be swallowed up in I am insignificant, look what everybody else has. I mean, there's so much fake news out there, and people can filter and look the way they want at any given time. And if people don't seek and strive and program and saturate their minds with healthy thoughts about themselves, their bodies, their career, their money, with gratitude, we're going to get swallowed up. I mean, we're going to be swallowed up, and we have a responsibility to future generations. So if my only responsibility is to leave this world a drop better than how I found it, at least I know the people I have had conversations with are looking at something differently in their life. And hopefully it's giving them hope. It's giving them a higher vibe. It's putting some love in their hearts. And, I've been doing this work now 25 years.
I can't believe it. Well, again, you said something earlier, I guess, and I these things stick in my brain, everything you're saying is like, you're 18, father passed, you got a lot going on, a lot of changes happening, and a big one, the nuance of what you said, it wasn't just losing a father, it's losing a family structure. I'd never thought of it that way. So that was a realization as you said that. That was more of an awakening in my mind. Oh yeah, that's true, right? I mean, when my father left, I thought I just lost a dad, but yeah, we lost the structure, but I'd never ever put that together for myself. But you said that you went to the library, and you young people, there used to be these buildings, I think they're still there, that you could go in. You could actually take a book home and read it. but you go and sit, and Zig Ziglar was that. I mean, all these great people, you look at anyone who lives a vibrant and a life by choice and a life by design, typically are great or voracious learners. They're great students. They're not just great teachers, they're great students. And I think about you in that library, and I wonder what were some of those early books, or what was some of the earliest sort of things you learned that started to help have this shift to how you've shown up in the world since. Do you remember, is there anything that stands out from those early days in the library?
Oh yeah, it was Zig Ziglar. It was Shad Helmstetter. It was the greats. It was Dale Carnegie's books. It was Napoleon Hill books. It was the first event. I mean, this would be only me, right? The very, very first public event I go to is this giant guy with these enormous teeth in Aspen, Colorado. I saved it was a fortune back then. I'm in my early 20s, and the first event I do is Date with Destiny, Tony Robbins. No food, no sleep, it's complete stripped down. I believe at that time it was a 5-day course. I stayed in this rinky-dink hotel with all my guy friends one of the guys was my ex-husband, later on turned out to be my husband. We weren't together at that point. We were good friends. And I remember leaving Date with Destiny with, it's a tough course, and it would be tough for me to do now. I can't even imagine, doing that so young. That was my first exposure. And then after that, really wanting to do work, like real grit work, and saved a lot of money and did a lot of courses and was always the youngest person in the room, and recognized that why would people wait until they're, till they're older and have gone through so much to want to expand, to want to look through their glasses differently. And we get so dirty, they get so foggy, we forget that we get to clean them and create new visions all the time. And the reason I embrace change and really truly embrace change is that's the best news all day, is that if I don't like who I am, I just get to show up differently. If I don't like anything about my life, I have an opportunity to change it. So when change is at opposing, it's opposing in our mind. I don't like change. I can't take what's going on in the world. I don't accept death. Then we're just saying, you know what? I'm just going to stay constricted.
Yeah.
So we have to really come to grips and embrace change, find the gratitude in everything that we have right now so that we get to constantly evolve. I have no idea who I'm going to lose as a result of what's going on in the world right now. I just found out another friend last night was diagnosed. I mean, it's been pretty consistent. But here's what I know. I had no idea prior to this epidemic who was going to get hit by a bus, who is going to be diagnosed with cancer, who is going to, if I just lived in that place all day long of worry and like, why bother doing anything?
It's so funny because I'm not a guy that surfs on social media very often, but occasionally things pop up that I see. And today I saw a photograph of a friend of mine with his mother, and he wrote this little article about, she says she's ready, and she's now confined into a nursing home where she's just sitting all day long. And she's lovely. I've met this lady. She's absolutely lovely. But she's telling him, I'm ready. And there's this kind of like this little sentence, and she's laying with her head on his shoulder, and he's looking out this way, and it just says, she's telling me she's ready, and I told her, whenever you're ready, type of thing. And I wrote a little, I was drawn to this, and it's interesting, we were talking about loss. And I think loss, whether we're talking about human loss or loss of anything, the same rules apply. So again, even if you think that some of you don't like talking about loss, I love it. I think it's one of these things that we should talk about more, because it's inevitable, and we never know the age. Recently, I was asked to MC a 26-year-old guy's funeral. And he died in a boating accident 2 weeks before his wedding. So all these people were flying in for his wedding, all flew in for his funeral. And, just when I described that, for most people, it's such a shock. And yet when I was there with 400 people, and the wife came up to me, or the fiance came up to me, and she said, Dave, everyone, they keep coming up and telling me how sad they are and how unhappy I don't want them to do that anymore. Ask them to come up and tell me a great story about him, or the funny story. And so I started, and for the rest of it, I actually, him and I are connected through humor, and I told his favorite joke. And the place started to laugh. And here we are at a 26-year-old funeral, and people are celebrating, because we don't know how long we get, but celebrating that life. right? And going back to this social media post, and I wrote on there, I felt compelled to write, and I won't use his name. I said, you know, I think this is a great lesson, but for us all to be ready, you know, not just your mom being ready because of her age, but we should all be ready. I not should, but I can choose to be ready today. If my life ends today, every single person that knows me intimately, including my children, will know that I passed leaving it all here, you know, squeezing the juice out of it. And I passed with a smile on my face, with joy in my heart, and zero regrets. And so that passing, in fact, in my will, I've left $100,000 for the party. And, you know, and I want to throw this massive party because, again, I think about death as something we plan for, you know, and plan in a beautiful way. I want to plan. So the one thing I'm certain of is there's going to be a huge party. And I know that people who don't have the money to get there, well, there's some money waiting for them. If my family can't fly over from England, boom, we can buy them flights. So anyway, I know I'm babbling here, but I just really love this idea and the word change, but I also think adaptability. You know, adapting. The world right now has changed because of this pandemic, and people who are great adapters like you and I, we breeze through this. We do. It's just. I mean, I'm not saying you haven't had moments, because you mentioned to me that a couple of. I mean, when you lose people, it's still loss, but it's still this ability to navigate it more beautifully. Let's talk about that adaptability piece as well.
Well, I think we get to embrace sadness. I mean, my gosh, we're not robotic. So I definitely shed my tears and have my wall-kicking moments where I feel it's unfair, and I don't stay there. So I've chosen, because I love choice, chosen to be a joyous person. So a joyous person is joyous. It's their way of being versus happy. I could wake up and be really happy and get a flat tire. I'm not so happy. It throws you. It's a weaker version of joy. Joyous, you still experience sadness. You experience loss. We can mourn for what isn't how we know it to be anymore. I'm super excited about my daughter going to college. Like, I cannot wait, but I'm going to miss her. I've already had those moments where I call my girlfriends and we cry together, and I'm like, this is hard. Like, your baby's leaving and we're like getting older. Like, how did this happen moments? And it's just part of it. And David, you know, I want to know from you, your dad left. How old were you?
I was 7.
Ah.
And we were living in a foreign country. My dad was in the Army, so we were living in Germany. And the day he left, it's one of those, you know, these moments in my history, because I look back through them. Imagine you're looking, you know, those in France, if you've ever seen those sunflower fields, and yet there's these ones that grow like 4 feet bigger than all the others, and all across the field you see these standout moments, right? And so this is one of those moments in my history where it's a standout moment, because I'm 7 and we were living on the 3rd floor of an apartment building in Germany, and my dad's walking out the door and my mom said, make him stay. And I ran down the stairs behind my dad, down 3 flights of stairs. And my dad and I are best friends now. But my dad jumped in the car, drove away, and I didn't see him again until I was like for 7 years, or 8 years, I think it was. But it was one of those moments, and I had to walk back up the stairs as a 7-year-old and interpret that I let him go. And it took me years to figure out, because I was quite angry, it took me years to understand that that burden was inside of me, and I made that mean something. When she asked me and I failed, and I remember walking up those stairs one at a time, thinking that I created it, right, at that moment, right? As a 7-year-old, that was the picture I created in the world. So interesting you asked that.
What had you, what do you think it was that finally had you release that burden and you didn't own it as yours anymore? Or do you still?
I think for years I did carry it, but I didn't know it was there. Like most people, were unconscious about the sort of the interpretation I had of the world. There was a lot of other things that occurred, and so when I left England, fortunately, what happened for me is at 20, I went on a 6-day trip to Tunisia with a bunch of guys because we'd won a dart tournament. And all my friends were drinking, they were smoking pot, everyone was getting high and drunk. That was my world. And again, the thing that I grown up understanding is that people right now, you can think about a tribe in Africa, but we can't really feel what they're going through in this moment. We can understand there are people there. So the way that my world, the only world that existed for me back then was alcohol, drugs, pubs. I'd left home at 15. I'd left school at 15. And I was just in this cycle. And to me, there was no other world. I didn't know that people, had other ways of living or, I just didn't know. This was the only world I understood. But then when I went on this trip, I had 500 pounds left, and I ended up traveling, backpacking for 10 and a half years through 42 countries. And it was because I got out of my comfort zone. And that's why I do so much work. And even whatever event I do, I'm always pulling people outside their comfort zone so that they can discover something really new and vibrant. And for me, this inadvertently leaving England and leaving everything I knew and everyone I knew, and then being exposed to all these different cultures and people. And I met young people who spoke differently and had, dreams and goals and aspirations. All my friends were happy in the pub, and, they worked in a factory. My sister, my brother, and my mother all worked at the same factory in a car plant making diesel engines, parts for diesel engines. And that was going to be my, you got to work here. We can get you a job here. That was it. That was the aspirations back then of the family, right? So, yeah, so I left, and, during that journey, I discovered a new world. But when I started doing the work, you talked about the library moment. I had network marketing did the same for me. I saw a tape, a big old tape. Remember VCR people, young people? Like a boat anchor, What I always joke about, Lisa, is like, those of us who are old enough, the VCR was like this. If anyone ever gave you a movie on a videotape, it was always at the end of the movie, because it used to take as long to rewind it as it did to watch it. So you'd be like, you have to keep your finger on it as well, because they didn't have automatic buttons. Anyway, so, and I remember watching that, and I was encouraged to go to a personal development program, first one ever. And that started the journey. And once I started to realize that you think about Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, I thought, really, I can think differently. No one had ever given me permission to decide the thoughts I think. I thought I was just thinking the thoughts that I'd been taught by everyone around me, and most of the people around me were unhappy and unsuccessful. And when I started to listen to the thoughts of successful, happy, or joyous people, I started to realize they were contrary to my own. And I started to say, well, if I really want to have a life of choice, then all I got to do is start there. Start with, let's start by the way I think. And then my thoughts lead to my actions, or my thoughts led to how I felt, my feelings led to my actions led to my results. So then I started to take extreme responsibility for my results. And no blaming, no justifying, no complaining, no victim talk in my life whatsoever. So I took away the victim, because I was I wasn't a terrible victim, but I was still a victim, right? And then the authenticity piece, where I was willing to be 100% myself 100% of the time. There's nothing hidden. You ask me anything. I always think that, a powerful person is someone who's transparent. You can see through them. There's no closets. There's no hidden part. Like you and I, our conversation the other day, what was so beautiful about it is we talked about something not a lot of people would talk about right off the bat, but you do, I do. And that extreme transparency gives extreme power. Because if you're not afraid of anything, if you're not afraid of any of your mistakes, I mean, I've lied, I've cheated, I've stolen, I've done everything, I've been in jail, I've been, all these things, and I don't regret one of them, because they allowed me to get to this spot. So that was a very long answer to a very small question, but anyway, that's kind of, my realization was in the same way I think you did, was doing some work. And one of the works I did, where I had to look at my life, and I did work on forgiveness, because I was carrying this hatred. I mean, I remember phoning my mom when I was 18 and calling her the C word, because I hated her so much. I love her. We're great friends now. It's hard for people to understand this, right? But so I carried this burden inside of me, like a poison. And when I did the work, one of the things I was asked to do was to look at my life through my mother's eyes and my father's eyes and my brothers and my sister's eyes, because, and start to see the world through and reinterpret what happened, to create a new interpretation. And when I did that, I allowed myself to truly forgive, not just, not want it to change, not want them to apologize, not want them to say it happened or not happen, but just for me to let it go and to truly step into the world in my own skin, in my own power, and see them for the beautiful people they are, and not for some of the things that happen, some of the things that, cause us both pain, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, and forgiveness is key. I think not only forgiving your mom, but forgiving yourself for feeling as if you failed from at 7. Can you imagine now a 7-year-old's a baby, and to have that burden and to feel that level of responsibility? What we do by being so transparent, and sign me up other than jail, I think I've done it all too. We give other people permission to be human. And I could see it so clearly when I heard that recording this morning. People sit in a stadium in the cheap seats and judge the person on stage, right? It's a metaphor for life, pouring their heart and soul out and saying, yeah, I'm divorced. Yeah, I left a company. Yeah, I did this. Yeah, I did that. And we're putting everything out there. The people who condemn and ridicule need to look in the mirror. And it's when we really put it out there, we attract people just like us who are like, we're human beings having a human experience, right? Or spiritual beings having a human experience. And this is all part of it. So I think it's just playing full out and being so honest about it. I am human. My kids are like, Mom, I can't believe you did this. I'm like, sorry, I forgot to pick up the book and look on page, 1,000,002 on how to raise a 16-year-old during this crisis. Let me figure this out. It's like, how do you have judgment? I've never done this thing called life before. So we're all figuring it out. And
doing the best we can with what we know, right?
And I pray that every person that hears this can let go of the shame and the guilt around doing things that have made them more courageous today. You cannot move forward in life, cannot, with any kind of expansion, taking a risk without winding up at some point with mud on your face. It's impossible. It's only if you play the game. And I lived the beautiful lie. I was the poster child for the beautiful lie. I had the perfect house and the perfect marriage and the perfect career and the perfect little children, and was literally an empty vessel dying inside. I was the most inauthentic version of myself as a woman. And I couldn't tolerate it anymore. And the more personal development work I was doing, the more I was being called to step out. And I believe that people who are down and out about personal development are so unwilling to take a look, they get hard on other people who do it. Because if I step out and I declare, this is now what's comfortable for me, and I leave that old skin behind, I'm forcing other people to have to evaluate and take a look as well. So people like you and I can easily intimidate others who are not yet willing to take a look. And what I hope that this exchange does is it allows people to say, hey, you know what? It's only shame and guilt if I hold it inside and hide it. Once I start to just get it out, it's really not that bad. It kind of dissipates in the air. Like, oh, you find lots of us who have been down that same path.
Well,
and it's the road.
The relatability of, because everyone's walking around, I feel, again, I remember, like you, I've trained over 1 million people. And so, I've heard a lot of stories, and they're very similar all over the world, because I work all over the world. Even today, I work in Europe, I work in Australia, New Zealand, in Asia. And so it doesn't matter where I am in the world, the stories are always the same. And people there, but a lot of people are walking around thinking it's only them that's having this happen. And everyone else looks so together. And yet when somebody, they admire suddenly shares a truth, you almost feel so, because they've been hiding behind a mask to pretend what's happened hasn't happened, which creates this massive disconnect. And then, so I think that part of the show that I really want to come out is the relatability. It's behind every great person. Yes, they go the extra mile, but all of us have the same stuff going on. And in the old days, we dealt with it differently. And today we deal with it differently again because of the work. And there is that bit in the middle, because I haven't met anyone yet, anyone who's leading the kind of life of choice that hasn't done some work.
Oh gosh. Oh. And you know what, on that, you just said something that was so good. I'm like, oh yes. You went like this and I saw your whole body move. You just, when they hear their story and somebody else, it allows them to go like this. Oh, it's like the burden. And what happens when we release that burden, the shame, the guilt, that whatever we were hiding for some secret, for I don't know why, we allow ourselves to disconnect from the people who needed us to pretend and live in that story. We break up with them because they're in their story too. So when people step out of their story that they've made up, or they say, you know, this is really me, you're leaving behind life that you knew, and friends that thought you were in a certain way. And it's really beautiful to see who really are your people, and to attract new people and new souls and new vibrations and just incredible people who are like, oh, it's so refreshing to have people just talk about their human experiences.
Well, we're going to get, in a moment, we're going to end this first 45 minutes and we're going to move to a second 45 minutes where I want to explore that with you a little bit more, because what I feel is what we have in common. Again, I keep getting goosebumps when you say stuff. And I always say those goosebump moments are the moments that connect us, right? And is that the beauty of network marketing. Both of us are professional network marketers. And, you know, I want to talk about that in the second half of this is, you know, this exactly what you talked about. Is that there's this other element of network marketing. You talked about seeking out different rooms just to listen to language that you could start to model, even though you weren't in the profession. I want to go into how you got into the profession. But then there's this whole other thing about the true network marketers that I admire and I respect. And the authenticity is a real part of their DNA. There's an authentic part of them. But so is personal development. Personal development seems to be one of the key things again. But this community, this culture where people can come in and find a way to discover their true authenticity and release, like you say, that shed the masks and shed the stories that are holding them back, and discover, because I say right vehicle, right time, right you. Discover the right vehicle at the right time, but it has to be the right you. And that right you part is why you've created these teams. I mean, you're over 200,000 people in your teams, and a master team builder and a great at developing leaders. So I want to explore a little bit of that. But before we go from this, I always love to leave, if we can, with a challenge. And I wonder, based on the conversations we've had, which is around gratitude, around a grit and adaptability and truth, I wonder if you can think about a challenge for the person listening, whether they're brand new, maybe they haven't done any work yet, or maybe they're people feeling stuck right now, or stuck in their business. Maybe they're feeling isolated because of the very conditions we're living under. What's something you want to challenge them with? And I hope you people listening and watching are realizing that we haven't sat down and made a plan here, because we're having a conversation. So I'm throwing this at Lisa I didn't say, hey, make sure you have this ready at the end. No, we didn't do that. So Lisa, what do you think? What was something you think that would really help people, especially at this time?
I would, because we have so much time right now, right? This beautiful moment of reflection. I would sit and I would write an unbridged 50-page emotional autobiography, back and front. Like, you can't stop. Don't pick the pen up. You're going to burn it. You're going to shred it after. So nobody's ever going to read it. But really talk about everything that you've ever go in a place in a couple of hours by yourself and just put it all down, all of it. All the stuff, all the secrets, all the stuff that you really want to say to this person and that person, and get it out. Write it, burn it, release it.
We're talking, just to be clear though, we're talking about any stuck emotions or energy, anything we're hiding, anything that creates the mask, any fakeness, or, all these kind of things where So what we're releasing or letting out on that piece of paper is all the stuck energy, right?
Stuck energy, yeah. And limiting beliefs. There's so many limiting beliefs around all those stories. And, to really just put it all out, all the stuff that you're carrying that feels heavy, get it out, put it on paper, burn it, get rid of it. And then you may take a little bit of time to recover from this. Write a letter to your younger self, your age where you remember before your mom said that to you, before I walked in the door with my book bag and they said, sit down, we have something to tell you. Before those moments happen to us, write a letter to your younger self about what they can expect, what lessons they can expect to learn, and that there's going to be hardships that they have to uncover. And when we look at it like this, like, wow, look how far I've come, going forward, it doesn't feel as hard. It's really, I can, and I know you can too, David, we embrace the challenges like, whoo, this is going to be some big lesson to talk about down the road. It's kind of like that because we just have been so transparent on our journey. So if you can't be transparent and vocal with the people you love or people who know you, get it out one way or the other on paper and then write that letter to your younger self.
Awesome. And I did that work, and it's beautiful. Again, and the key distinction here is to not stop writing. Just keep it coming. It doesn't have to, it's not going to be read. So it doesn't matter if one bit doesn't fit another bit, because as you're writing, something else will come up, and there may be anytime you've got conflict with someone, those things, because, again, once we do the work, you start realizing you have no conflicts. Conflicts dissolve as you do this kind of work. So thank you. With that being said, how do people follow you? Do you want to just tell us if people want to follow you on Instagram or Facebook, what's your handle?
Well, my kids say because I was born in the 1900s, I really like Facebook. And they say, Mom, it's all the people who are born in the 1900s like Facebook. So it's Lisa DeMayo, and I'm on Instagram, Lisa DeMayo.
Livoti is L-I-V-I.
L-I-V-O-T-I.
Just to get I always say Livoti, sorry. So Lisa
DeMayo.
Okay.
DeMayo.
Because she's old school. It's Facebook. You young people, I know. It's for old people.
I'm on Instagram. I don't know how I got 6,000 followers. My kids are helping me with this.
On Instagram, what do you like?
It's my name. It's very easy, David. Everything's my name because I can't remember all these passwords and names. Everything is my name.
Same with me. If you want to follow me at all, it's David T.S. Wood on Instagram and Old People's Facebook. With that being said, listen, this is about the extra mile.
Tell me what TS stands for.
It's my middle initials. And my dad, because my original name is David Scott Wood, or David Thomas Wood. And then my dad realized that Wood was such a boring name. So then they gave me another name so that I could hyphenate Scott Wood, because he thought it would sound posher. Because anyway, and because David Wood is such a common name, my bank's got 460 David Woods. So I started using TS because there are two other people in the personal development field. One of them's a bit sketchy. So people would put in David Wood and this other guy would come up, and he's actually got a slim build like I do as well. And so I started using TS so when people search it, it actually gets just to me. So Instagram and Facebook is David T.S., which is Thomas Scott is my middle initial. With that being said, we're going to end this show. I want you to think about this, the extra mile, the extra step. It's those little tiny things, those 1%. I mean, if you just do a little tiny bit more each day, it's not, you don't have to bite off the whole thing. Just do something. Those little, my extra mile, do that little extra step. Remember the challenge that's there. And we appreciate you. We thank you. And we're going to go and have a little break right now. And then we are going to record our second session together. You are awesome. Thank you.